Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from Virginia, we have Susan Klingenberg. Susan is the founder and president of Little Buckets Farm Sanctuary. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Fred. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed. Can you start by telling us how you started Little Buckets Farm Sanctuary?
Sure. So it's kind of a little bit of a backstory to how it kind of came to be. I had gotten a farm in Maryland, sort of a little bit. I guess you would say I was a little older than you normally would get your first farm. And when I was looking for that farm, I told all my family and friends I wanted to do a rescue, and honestly, most of them didn't really believe me. And and I ended up moving really close to where I grew up, and I loved that farm, but I knew I was going to fill it up, and so I started to get different animals, and because of social media, I started to follow some different sanctuaries, and I was learning some different things, and so for 2017, I decided to make this bucket list, which I had never done before. One of my friends had done it, where you just sort of make some things you want to do in that year. And I had decided I wanted to go to a livestock auction and save a life because I wanted to I just wanted to go to be able to do that. It was where my heart was. I had learned things that I didn't want. I just needed to go and help somebody. And so I went in March of 2017 to that livestock auction, and I sat in the parking lot and I cried because I knew it was going to probably be the hardest thing that I was going to face in terms of I wasn't going to be able to save them all. But that night, I went to the auction with the intent of potentially saving a goat because I already I had a few goats, but the calves came out first, and this little guy, the littlest one that night, came out, and that is who I saved, and hence that's how we got that was Little Bucket, and so I named him Bucket for bucket list, and I brought it, I literally had zero experience with calves. Obviously, I had bottle raised a couple goats, but it was going to be a learning experience. And, he literally just had been ripped from his mom, and I was going to be his new mom. And I just felt like we were going to be in it together. And after saving his life and, seeing knowing that I couldn't save them all, it drove me to make that dream happen. And so that was March of 2017 when I saved his life. And in August of that year, I started to look for farms. And this time I told my family that I was going to go where I love the farm because that's where I spend 99.95% of my time. I never get to go anywhere. So I needed to go where the farm was going to be perfect for a sanctuary. And almost little over a year later, after I saved Bucket, I moved to Virginia and began Little Bucket's Farm Sanctuary.
Now, most people's bucket lists might include going on safari, riding in a hot air balloon, swimming with dolphins, or travel. What was it about saving a life at a livestock auction that made it necessary for it to be on your bucket list?
I think it really came down to where I was following. I started to follow different sanctuaries, and I was learning things that I honestly didn't know about the dairy industry. And I, I like so many people, I grew up I didn't drink a lot of milk really growing up, but I certainly was, one of the kids that thought, cows just produce milk, like they didn't have, I didn't know anything about the whole being, that they had to be impregnated, and the fact that all the boys, were pulled and basically disregarded. And I learned it more through these other sanctuaries, with goats. And, to me, that was just another whole thing. Like I couldn't even imagine, like, how did goats get into this dairy picture? Um, and so I just, I just was absorbing it all, like what I was learning. And because I already had like that desire to really want to do a rescue, and probably when I first thought, I really thought more of it was going to be dogs and cats. Like, um, it just drove me to want to do the farm animals. I just had to do something, and that's where that came from, of wanting to go, save save someone basically directly, either from the dairy industry or from the meat industry, and give them a chance at life.
Take us back to that day where you show up at
Mhm.
the auction. Are you by yourself? Tell us what exactly happened.
So I, um, so my dad was living with me at the time, and so he knew where I was going, and I stopped by the feed store on my way, and I got every kind of feed there was, like, because I didn't know who I was going to bring home. So I needed to make sure I had something for lambs, for the calves. Like I had it all covered. And I had my big horse trailer with me, because again, I didn't know who I was going to bring home. So I did go by myself, and I was meeting, an acquaintance friend of mine, who was running a horse rescue, and so she had more experience with the whole auction, um, because she had saved a lot of horses, at auction. And so she, went with me, and I had adopted a couple horses from her. And so we sat there, and this was a very small, like, I was living in a small town, and this was just like the little city, not even a city, like livestock auction that was like a half an hour away. So I mean, it was definitely a very small auction.
Hmm.
And so I pull in there, and I get there early, and you just watch all the trailers come that are full of animals, where people are going to just, they're dropping them off to auction them off. And I can't fathom how anyone does that, honestly. And that's where it just gets so hard. And you get to sort of walk through the auction and see all the animals before they start, I guess, bidding on it. You bid on them, and you just, like me, I just fall in love with them all. Like I wanted to be able to save them all, and um, that's where it's hard. I mean, you tear up. I mean, it's it's very hard to see and know that the fate of 99% of those animals is going to be a very, very short life and a horrible death.
Mm.
One thing I've like never told anyone really, but there was like a sheep there that night that came came out after Bucket did, and because I had said I was only going to save one life, I was trying to hold to that, only because I was one person, and I knew I was going to have my hands full. But the sheep came out with deformed legs, and I just knew it wasn't. I knew she or he wasn't going to have a good ending to life, because someone was just going to disregard them because they had deformed legs. And I went to bid, and I just missed it. Like they didn't even wait, to get like a second bid. And like I can see that sheep in my head right now. I'll never ever forget him or her, because I just so wish I had saved her.
Yeah, that's so tough, right? You go to that auction, you see all of these animals, and you can only save one.
It's the hardest thing, is the hardest thing that night, and it's the hardest thing almost every day of my life now, because you want to be able to just rescue animals every single day, and I have space here, so you just want to be able to save animals, and you have to say no, or that's like the hardest thing, because you can't, you have to say no to animals sometimes, because I am only one person here, and so I have to have the time, and I have to have the resources, and I don't want the care of the animals that I have now to ever be jeopardized. I want everyone to have the ultimate care that they deserve, and so I'm only able to rescue right now a few animals, you know a year. I've rescued three in the last, I guess, 2 months, which has been incredibly hard on me physically, and I don't regret it in any way, shape, or form. But it's the hardest thing about sanctuary, being having to say no.
Right, and you don't have that many volunteers to help you or anything, so you're basically doing it all yourself.
Pretty much. My brother helped me through the. My brother and actually my sister-in-law were living here through COVID, and they moved away, which there was their plan. That wasn't anything they were doing wrong. That was I was a pit stop in their plan. But they moved in December of last year, and so since then I've been by myself, and I were able to start having some volunteers as COVID sort of got a tiny bit under control at that point, and but the help, and I mean, I've told every single one of my volunteers that they're rescuing me, because to not have any help whatsoever it makes it really hard. So right now I have probably 4 to 5 days covered a week where they come 2 or 3 hours a day, and but the rest of all those hours and those days, and all the other million things that go into not only running the farm, but also I work.
Mm-hmm.
And and then you're a nonprofit, so things have to be done just to be a nonprofit. So you wear you wear a lot of hats. Social media is another job. Um, it's not a job. I love doing social media, but I'm literally putting videos together at like 11 o'clock at night, almost every night that I can stay up that late. So it's a never ending type of cause, I guess you would say, which I love, and I wouldn't change my life for the world, but it is very, very long days, and it's mentally, it's a lot of stress, I guess you would say, involved in it, caring for all these animals, because when you have 50 some animals, there's you don't have a huge amount of days where you feel like no one needs something extra.
Mm-hmm.
You always have somebody, oh, they have little, goop coming out of their eye, and they need to have, eye medicine put in, or it's just a million things. And then like right now, like I have two little baby goats, so I'm bottle feeding 4 times a day, two little babies. So there's always something that needs to be done for them. And I always say I tell them, like, they all get breakfast before I do. And then like I'm about ready to pass out, and like I'm finally like, okay, I got to go eat breakfast or something. And then I go eat, and then I go do a million other things. And then dinner time, they all eat their dinner first. And like it'll be 8 o'clock, and I'll be like ready to pass out. I'm like, I gotta eat something, and like the babies are ready for their bottle again. I'm like, you guys have to let me eat something before your next bottle. You've eaten 3 times today, and it's I have these conversations with them, and it's all it's why we do what we do, but it's a lot.
Yeah. So you get Bucket at the auction, and you bring him to the trailer, put him in the trailer. You drive him back
Mhm.
to, where were you living at the time?
I was in Maryland, really close to my hometown. I had bought near and I was in Manchester, Maryland at the time, and so I got home. It was dark, and I pull up, and I did put him in the trailer, even though he really could have been in my backseat area of my truck. Um, and I literally, I could carry him. So he was, I think, 46 pounds
Mm.
that night. And so then, like, my dad, like I said, was living with me at the time, and he he knew I was coming home was he was not quite the animal lover that like I am. So he just like shook his head at me, like he would shake your head at his daughter. I was like, oh my goodness, and but we sat there, and I fixed a bottle, and he helped me give him a bottle, and then I was like, mm, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't put him in the barn. It's like March. It's chilly, and that's where he ended up walking into the kitchen. Um, and he's walking around the kitchen, and like I'm almost really shaking my head at this point because now I have a camp around my kitchen, and and I'm like, okay. So then, like, I ended up, um, had a basement, and I basically made him a stall in my basement. And he went down there and slept during the night, and so it was like I loved it. I would have a whole house full of farm animals if they could all live in the house. So like even though I was shaking my head, I was loving it. Like this is awesome. Most people wouldn't probably say that, but I don't know.
Now, what is it about animals that made you start a sanctuary? Okay, so now you have Bucket and he's living in your basement. And so, but what gets you to start a sanctuary at that point?
um, I just I just always have loved animals, and you know, my mom was a huge animal lover, and we always we always saw dogs that needed help, and I ended up I really like I have another whole first. I always call it like the first part of my life. Like I played tennis very competitively,
Hmm.
so I traveled a huge amount when I was young, and I'm talking like from 10 years old on. So like I always wanted a horse growing up.
Uh-huh.
We had a little bit of land, but I I always say it was like the one thing my parents like didn't give in on. They never let me get my horse. But I also was like I wasn't home all the time because I was traveling so much with tennis. So it just it was weird. I mean, to be honest, my mom had passed away, um, and I needed to kind of we. I'm sorry if I ramble, but like it all kind of ties together. But like my parents had like where I grew up, they had divided their land up, and so I had a house that was right behind my parents' house, and so once she passed away, I decided that and for whatever reason, one of the last things I told her was I was going to get her a farm because she always wanted a farm, but she was never gonna move away from that house with all of us, and so being right there, and so I told her I was gonna get her our farm, and um, I started probably looking for a farm, maybe like 6 months after she passed away, and it took a long time to find one at that point, but she kind of always was driving me to do the farm, and then you know I know that she would have wanted me to save every life I could have possibly saved along the way because that's where I know I get all the love for animals from her.
Right. Now, how did you feel when you found the farm in Virginia? I mean, with the story that you just told us, how did you feel about finally getting that farm?
It was probably the biggest, I guess almost, I felt like getting my first farm was pretty gutsy, and my family and friends thought I was a little bit, they, they just couldn't believe I was doing it at that point in my life. But when I got this farm, it took it to a whole new level because I looked in all these different states for farms because, like I said, I was just going to go where the farm kind of was that I thought was the one, and I was so nervous about making this big decision that I really was like, when they say you're looking for new houses, that you want a big sign that says this is the one, and so I took this trip to Virginia, and I was not even pulled into the driveway, and I honestly knew it was the one. Um, and so I felt very at peace. Um, I looked at the farm for, I swear, about an hour. We walked, through the house, and then that, like, the house was never my my priority in looking at the farm. It was the fields and the barn and all of those things. That's what mattered to me the most in terms of picking a property. And it just fit like all of what I needed to, because I had a farm full of animals that I needed to move to the new farm. But then I also wanted to have room to be able to expand and be able to, obviously rescue as many animals as I could. So I wanted to try to find essentially as big a property as I could afford. This farm just met so much of the criteria. Even though, I mean, I grew up in a small town, but this is really a small town. It's even smaller than the town that I grew up in, which, like, I love being rural. I'm all about that. I don't get to do anything anyway, so everything I do is here on the farm. So, like, having like places to eat out, or all these fun things to do around me, it didn't matter to me in the big scheme of things,
Hmm.
because I wasn't going to get to do them. So, um, it's the one thing with running a sanctuary is, I mean, you're all in. And the hardest part was I was going to be 4 hours, 4.5 hours from, a majority of my family. I got closer to a few members of my family, but where I grew up, I was essentially 4.5 hours away. So it was leaving all my family and friends that were there, and thinking that I was going to maybe get back home, somewhat often, but that really never happened. Like, I got back, I've been back, I don't know, like once in 2 years, 1 year and a half, I guess, for one day. So it, it takes like a minor miracle to be able to go away, for any even just a long day. It takes a lot of work to be able to go away.
Right, because you got the animals to worry about all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What is the timeline from when you got Bucket living in your basement to when you got this farm in Virginia?
It was 14 months. So I put the contract on this farm almost exactly a year from when I got him. Um, and it was, I mean, it would have been sooner had I found the farm sooner. It was a matter of, I started to look for farms about 5 months after I got him. Um, so I was, the, the force was, he had driven the force into me to make it happen. And like, I had been kind of teeter tottering when doing it, but like once I got him, only because honestly, like, moving a farm is can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And like, quite quite the undertaking. And some days before I really was all in, like before I saved Bucket, like some days I just was like, I just can't do it. Like, I just can't physically move this farm. And I loved that farm, but it just, like I said, it was kind of getting at max capacity, and I wasn't ready to kind of stop being able to help animals. 'Cause not that I was, I only rescued a few animals at that point, sort of just, you know, like Bucket. Um, it just, I wanted to be able to keep doing that. And so once I saved him, then like that teeter tottering kind of ended. And then I was like all in. And then I really started to look. I was physically looking at farms in August of that year.
Now, can you tell us the relationship between Colton and Bucket?
Yeah, so Colton was my rescue dog that I had, and when Bucket came home that night, she was very fascinated by him, and but I didn't put them together that night. But Bucket, when he was in my kitchen, he did go lay down on her dog bed, and so it was just like this, like my like first experience with a calf. Like, I never been close to one ever in my life, and so like he goes and lays down on the dog bed, it just, it clicks in your head, like, he is so smart.
Hmm.
He is like 1 day old, and he knows that it's soft, and that's where he should fall down and like lay down and go to sleep, because if it lays down on the ceramic tile, like it was gonna be hard, and like it was just so cute, and like just, but he was so smart. And so the next day, like I I think, I don't know if I didn't put them together necessarily like first thing, but they were definitely going fence to fence, nose to nose between a fence. And then sure enough, like once I put them together, they just hit it off. Um, Colton just became Bucket's buddy, and friend. And, like I said, he had been pulled from his mom, so he didn't have his mom, and like Colton became that surrogate friend. And they kind of just did everything as much as possible together. I mean, Bucket was so small that you know, I would just be outside and he would just kind of go everywhere with me. He didn't have to go to a field or anything like that. And so Colton was just right there with him, and they just all of a sudden were like sleeping next to each other, and they started to run together, and then they're just playing together. It kind of became inseparable. It was just like I didn't have that experience to know, like, I didn't know if this was like if it was really normal that your dogs kind of befriended, calves so easily. And looking back, I know there's definitely a lot of dogs that have become friends with calves, but I think their friendship is at a pretty high level of, like, I don't think there's a huge amount of animal friends that are as strong a friendship as they have, because it continued for so long, and it's still, you know the friendship is still there. They don't necessarily romp around the field anymore. They're both older, and well, they certainly, Colton, when I go into the field, if all the boys in Bucket are laying down, a lot of times I'll go out in the field and lay down, like kind of sit with them, and Colton will come with me. She'll lay right next to Bucket. So it's still there, very much still there.
Now, how does Colton get along with all the other animals?
She, well, it the she's like amazing with them. So it didn't stop at Bucket in the big scheme of things. It basically all, like every baby that I rescue, like she is right there, and she's just like amazing with them. And what what is so cool is that, they are as receptive to her as she is to them, because they're coming from all different situations, and they just trust her. And it's like a comfort level that they all have. And goats, like goats aren't notorious for probably, really liking dogs. And I mean, all the rescues that I've brought in, that, especially the babies, Colton is kind of right there with them, and giving them kisses, and just sort of, you can tell, just sort of watches over them, and it's just really, really cool to watch. Very sweet.
Now, what is it about Colton that the animals all love?
I think she has like a calming nature to them. She's very, very calm with them, and she just, it's a little bit of a, I think, like a guardian to them. Um, and then, she has a play side to her. And so, like, depending, like, there's been times where, she wants to play with the different goats that we've had. And so, but she just kind of knows. But I rescued a German Shepherd in February, and it was really like the first rescue dog that I had welcomed since with her. And so, I, dogs, Colton is, she's like my best friend. She's always by my side as well. And so, I wanted to make sure that she felt the same way about another dog as she does with all the farm animals that come. And sure enough, she did. But they do play, like, they they play all day long. And so she definitely gets it. Like, it's very similar play to what she played with Bucket. It's that play is still in her. It's just that Bucket is too big and not necessarily really wanting to play like that now that he's 4 years old now. So um, he's not quite, not that he doesn't run around the field and all, but he's, as we all get older, we get a little bit more laid back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that if I'm Colton, I'm a little concerned about how big how big Bucket is right now. She could probably stomp on him.
Yeah, well, that's part of the thing too. Like, um, you know, when Bucket was young, it was only Bucket, and Colton was really his friend. And then, I got Bailey when Bucket was 6 months old, and it still didn't stop anything with Bucket. Their friendship continued, and um, Colton had similar moments with Bailey as well, not like the continuous moments, but definitely, would play, would lay down with Bailey. But then Bailey kept getting bigger and bigger. And then, in April of, I guess, my first spring, after I had started, when I was down here in Virginia, I rescued two more baby cats, Miles and Journey. And so, once they have grown up and now they're 2 years old, I have four boys in that field, so it is intimidating for Colton to go in there. We got four, and Bailey is just huge. So that's part of the big reason why they don't probably do a lot of playing anymore. We got four boys that she's got to be aware of. And I obviously don't want anything to happen to her. So, like, I would never let her run around the field with all four of them. That would be just a bad situation.
Right. Now, would you say that the animals are like family to you?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Um, yeah, I never had kids of my, I guess I would say two leg kids at this point. I have a whole bunch of four-legged kids. But yeah, I'd do anything for them. I would give them my life. I would give any of them my life. Um, I would do anything to protect them. Like running the sanctuary, it's, you're running a sanctuary with all these animals, but they're all your family, and you worry about them every day, and that it is hard to, like, be constantly worrying about this many animals every day. Um, So that part is hard. You have to manage it yourself.
Hmm.
But yeah, they're absolutely my family. The one thing when I was looking at farms was I really wanted to like have like a farm that had the apartment above the barn, because I just honestly I just wanted to be like within the barn living, because that's where I want to be. I want to be with them. And that didn't quite work out, but my house is kind of turning into, right now I have Polly and Tibbet, like the two baby goats, and Sonny and Colton, and there's always we'll always have different rescues kind of living in the house with me at different times. Just Tater and Todd just moved out once I got Tidbit, so it's I made one of my little pantry room in my house, and now that has become and it was Tater and Todd's bedroom, and now it's Polly's bedroom.
Now, when you have such a close bond with the animals, like a family member, do you worry about them getting older?
In terms of like that they're going to outlive me.
In terms that the one of them might pass.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, especially, I mean, it's a constant worry, of making sure that they're all healthy and they all have what they need. Um, one of our goats has been ended up having a disease that basically she was got when she was nursing with her mom well before she came here, and she's going to have a rough road, and more than likely, she's not going to live a full life, because of all the battling of health issues that she's battling. And the one thing that all the animals um, do, and I think a lot of people see, is that they're such fighters. Um, Farm animals, when they get sick, in a lot of the settings, if they're at a dairy farm, or all the different potential settings other than a sanctuary, it's not always a given that the person is going to um, do what that animal needs in terms of getting well. A lot of times they're just kind of disregarded once they get sick, and um, even my vets, they've seen where I've given these animals a chance to kind of recover and fight through different issues. Um, I mean, I have now 3 goats that have neurological issues, and they typically wouldn't have been given a long life, and they're just amazing. They're just amazing how much they fight through what they've been given. They don't know otherwise. So
Well, let's talk about the goat gang, shall we?
sure.
The 8 is enough goat gang that you got going on over there.
Yeah, so we have a couple different gangs. So we have the 8 is enough gang, and they're the original 8 goats that came down from Maryland from me, with me. Um, and a few of them are, uh, I guess you would say, the original goats that started my love for goats. So Summer and Stormy and Sailor and Tank, they definitely, uh, I mean, I just fell in love with them. I just fell in love with goats immediately.
Hmm.
But like, it, I immediately kind of got thrown into rescuing with goats, because I went to get 2 goats. This was before I was really even knowing that goats needed to be rescued, honestly. And so I was going to this farm, and I knew I was going to be getting 2 goats, and the farm was letting me visit them before they were going to be old enough to be weaned. And when I was there one time, I saw one of their goats had recently had babies, because they would literally have the babies in this field, like this small field. And I thought I saw one that was sort of being pushed off to the side, and So I went and got the owner, and sure enough, it was a triplet. And the two brothers and her sister was like tremendously bigger, and then there was this little guy, and he was so tiny. And so, long story short, they were like, I offered to take him home and try to save him and bottle feed him, um, and they agreed, and they said, just know that there's a good chance he wasn't going to make it through the night. And he got home, and we got some cholesterol in him, and 45 minutes later, he actually stood, and I named him Rocky because I just felt like he was just gonna like be a fighter, and he was fighting that night just to live. He couldn't even raise his head up when we found him, and now he's now 5 years old. So that was kind of, even though I went to get two goats to sort of to start having goats on my farm, I ended up immediately rescuing one, and he came home with me before even Summer and Stormy came home. So I bottle raised him, and it was just the it was just the it was an ultimate experience of just seeing of raising him, and obviously wished his mom could raise him, but being able to save his life and not give up on him was, I mean, again, that was just sort of the start of it all. It was just these little steps along the way that was getting me to where believing that I needed to make the sanctuary, a reality.
Now, how do you decide on the names? Do you just decide like, hey, he looks like a fighter. He's Rocky. He's I don't know. Besides Bucket, obviously.
Yeah, Bucket was easy. Some names come to me really easily, and some names are hard. They don't come to me easily. Sometimes I now like often will get help from all of our followers and supporters online.
Can you give me an example of one that you had a difficult time with?
Colton, actually, I mean, obviously before a sanctuary, but Colton went through like many names when I rescued her. I could not find a name that I liked that fit her. And obviously, Colton is a boy's name, and she is a girl. and, and so I, she was I adopted her, and so she, obviously comes with a name from the shelter, the rescue, and it just didn't, it really wasn't, it didn't fit her to me, and I like a little bit, I guess you would say, sometimes tougher names, I guess you would say. I don't know if that's the
Stronger
right word.
names.
Stronger names, right? There you go. So I looked at her, and like I was just like, even though she was a girl, like I couldn't put like a frilly name to her. Like it just wasn't, and not that frilly names are bad, because I have animals that's totally appropriate, and I love their names. And please don't get me wrong on that. But it's just like I looked at her, and she needed like a strong name, and so I finally decided on Colton. And never in this world, when I named Colton, did I ever think that Colton was going to be like known by so many people. And obviously everyone thinks she's a boy because of Colton. And so it's just how things come about full circle. It's just funny.
Yeah.
So.
Now, you have a saying, make your bucket list happen. What do you mean by that?
Well, I just, because, I saved Bucket's life because I made that bucket list for that year in 2017. And, you know, I, I'm a strong believer. And I think everyone believes it, but some people don't. Sometimes you don't take action on it until it's a little too late. But you literally only live once, and you don't. You know, I lost my mom early, and I don't like. I want to you have to make the most of the time you have here. And so you know, if there's things that you want to do in life, they don't have to be huge, or they can be big, or they can be small. It doesn't matter. But like trying to put together a list, like well before it, like, you know, you get older,
Mm-hmm.
like making these lists and get these, you know, like have things that you want to do in life and make them happen. Because like, I mean, just look at, like, my whole life is completely different by the fact that I made that list and went and saved Bucket's life. I mean, here I am in Virginia, and you know, am running a nonprofit, and I live in a completely new area that, you know, it just how things sort of, you know, happen because I made that one decision. And so I'm just a strong believer, like you have to kind of go for it. And I never, like, kind of like, for probably many years, didn't really feel like I lived that way. And um you know, when I got my first farm, that was sort of like a kind of a big step. And then when I moved here, it was a humongous leap. And doing Little Buckets was a huge leap. So I don't know, I encourage people to try to make sure you do things that you want to do, you know, while you can.
Now, your transition to a plant-based diet based on the fact that your love for animals.
Absolutely.
When was that?
Uh, I don't have like a clear cut like date of when I actually went, you know, vegan. I did do it honestly in a tiny bit of a tiered process.
What was the trigger that got you to go and start even to look in the vegan direction?
Oh, it was definitely following of these other sanctuaries before I rescued Bucket, because they were teaching me all this stuff about the dairy industry, and you know, being able to see kind of behind the closed doors of the livestock auctions, you know, like, you know, social media was really probably, you know, it was a you know, big eye opener, because I mean, there's the marketing, the marketing of the dairy industry and milk and cheese and butter and all that. It's like, I mean, they had kept it hidden for so long. They had just, it was, I mean, basically they were being geniuses at covering like a whole side of the world that no one knew about, and or at least I didn't know about.
Yeah.
And so once I started to learn all of that, then like it was like I knew I had to do it. Um, and I wasn't eating meat at the time. Or I guess red meat at that point. The only thing I ever ate was a little bit of chicken, and I gave that up. Um, and then it was basically like the hard things that, you know, a lot of people battle of giving up. It was really, cheese was like my hardest thing. And it wasn't that I didn't want to give it up. It's just I didn't, like, years ago, I guess this was, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, I guess it would have been that wasn't as many options out there as it is now. And now, like, now it's like, you know, you just go down to the grocery store and there's a whole vegan section, and the cheeses are amazing and the butters are amazing. It's so much easier than it was just in that, you know, if you go back, say, 5 years. To me, like, I just think, you know, the foods have made such a huge progress. And there's, you know, the excuse that I had back then, which, you know, obviously it's a horrible excuse. Um, you know, it's one thing you beat yourself up, and when you run a sanctuary, you beat yourself up that you were vegan your whole life. That's for sure. You look back and it's like, it's just hard. It's just hard. I hate that I wasn't vegan my whole life.
It's totally understandable because, like you said, the dairy industry and the marketing and everything, they hide it. I mean, I didn't know. I had no idea. I just thought that
Yeah.
it was the normal thing. And of course, you grow up with your parents telling you that this is food and everything, and you just think that that's normal. And then when you are old enough and you start to understand and you start to question, you start to realize that it's not normal, that cows don't just give milk.
Right.
Bacon is actually a pig. You know, these are not just
Right.
things that you go and buy in the store.
I always say I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I always say that my mom was wore out by the time was she had not had me, but once I go older, like when I said I didn't want to eat something, like she just said okay and fixed me something else. Like that was she had like given up on like being like you need to try this, you need to try this. And so I went my whole life and my diet has been the conversation of so many like friends, like I get together with friends or coworkers, my diet always used to come up because I mean, basically you could describe my diet before being vegan was like a 12, like I always said, I ate like a 12-year-old, even though I was like in my 30s. I ate like mac and cheese and I ate pizza. I lived on pizza. Um, I didn't cook. I would stop and get carry out. Like, I ate French fries with cheese, So it was, I ate not healthy necessarily. Um, I did not eat very many different things. And so for me to try new things was a big deal. That was like the whole thing. I grew up, I never wanted to try anything new. And so like going vegan, like, I never believed I could probably even have like would do it and like have enough foods that I could like survive physically, like get enough in me to survive. But
Hmm.
like now, there's so many options. And, um, I always say if, with anyone like trying to like look into going vegan or going plant-based, you don't have to do it overnight, and you just pick some of like the common foods that you eat all the time. Like I always say butter. Like butter is like the easiest thing in the world to change over to because like the butter options are like you can't tell any difference. Like there's just no difference.
Right.
And so like you think of all the people that would just if every single person just stopped eating butter that wasn't plant-based, like how many lives would there be you'd be saving, And so and then you just keep adding, you keep making that transition as you realize that there's all these great options. And this is a person, this is coming from a person who never would try anything and doesn't cook. So can you imagine like if you're willing to just try anything, or if you're an amazing cook, like there's so many more options than I even ever have because I am a terrible cook and I have no time to cook. So believe me, I can burn anything, believe me. So you saw some of my meals, and it like food has never been a priority in my life. Like some people love to, like love to eat or love to go out to eat. Like I just need enough to keep me breathing. That is all I care about. And like that's how food is to me. And now like that food is obviously I'd never want it to harm anybody. And like I said, it's just knowing that I did harm animals earlier in life is, it's the things you have to live with in your life. Just believe that you can make those changes going forward. And hopefully the stories of the animals and can kind of, you hope people seeing Bucket and Colton, playing together. They make that connection that, Bucket, Bucket is just a grass puppy. I mean, he is the same as Colton all the way around. Same personality, same love, you know, they 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 want the same. And so um, having people be able to see that through social media is awesome because I think that's um, hopefully people are making that connection as they see all the animals out there.
Now, what do you think is the main reason most people don't make the connection between animals and what's on their plate?
Um, I think it's you have to have the mindset that you're open minded. I mean, I have friends, I have family that Um, you know, they're not, even though they see all my animals here, they're not willing to make that connection or make that change, no matter what. And they don't want to have to change their lifestyle. They don't want to have to change what they're eating. Um, and so you just have to have an open mind. And I think some people like there's I guess you would say like the light bulb that goes off where that connection is made. And there's some people that can go vegan like overnight because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some people that, they have that light bulb go off, but it, it's not as easy as it sounds like to make that change. And that's okay. And that's what I always say. Like, it's okay. It doesn't have to be an overnight change. Because it's not easy. I mean, you are changing. You're changing the way you probably have eaten for however many years. You
Right.
know.
How can we help people make that connection?
Well, from my perspective, it's making that connection with that you're saving a life involved. If you're leaving meat off your plate or if you're leaving dairy out of your meals, like, I mean, you're saving lives. And so, like, if you see Bucket running around the field and you say, "Oh, I love Bucket. God, I love Bucket," then you also love the millions that don't get to live. And so that's where they just have to be able to make that connection past the animals here or at any sanctuary. Um, and just like I said, have that open mind to willing to just try the foods that are out there because they've become so much. There's so many. It's a lot more easily accessible vegan foods. I mean, I live in a really small town, um, and I can go 5 minutes down the road to my grocery store and get vegan foods. And like, you wouldn't have said that years and years ago.
Right.
So like the excuse that you can't find vegan food or you don't have access to it, like that doesn't really work anymore because it is out there. And so you just got to try it. Be willing to try it.
Is there a documentary or a book that you have suggested to somebody transitioning to a plant-based diet?
It's a lot of those documentaries, and so that really show the hardcore side of the dairy industry or the meat industry. And if I'm talking to the person that wants to know everything, then you can watch those documentaries that have all that detail, which you need those documentaries to be able to show that side of it because like some people really need to see like the really really hard part of
Mm-hmm.
of what happens to these animals. And some people will say, I'll never watch that. And that's fine. And so some people can just watch Bucket and make that connection. But then some people need to see what happens to all the buckets if they don't get saved by a sanctuary. And so those people, there is documentaries out there that show that. And it's a matter of like how open that person is and how much they're willing to really want to see it. Because I mean, if you once you see what you see in those documentaries, I would hope like the normal person shouldn't be able to ever be able to not go vegan at that point because it's horrible. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible what happens to these animals that go to slaughter, um, or the babies that just get killed because they're a boy and they're a baby. I mean, they're just horrible deaths. I've learned like with like the people that follow our account and stuff, like they're not. Some of those people definitely could watch those documentaries, but a lot of the people like they're not the ones that are gonna. Like, I can't post some of that horrible stuff on my because they don't want to see it, and
Right.
so and that's fine because there's accounts out there that will show it and they can find those. And um, for the people that want to see it. So,
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan, and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
so the before vegan, I would say, I guess I was almost, I guess, was blind to it. Not blind, or I wasn't aware. I was unaware of what was going on, really. So I guess that's how I felt like I was, I didn't know all the things I know now. So now that I am vegan, I mean, I feel like I'm an advocate. Um, I'm going to advocate for saving animals any which way I can, if it's from, you know, abandonment, neglect, or just from the dairy industry or the meat industry. I'm going to advocate for them, and I want to be able to save as many animals as I can. You know, I just want to be able to save as many animals as I can, and then hopefully, and the goal of, I would say, always the ultimate goal is that, as more and more people make these changes in their diet, that these industries start to go away, and down the road, and maybe I won't see it in my lifetime, but hopefully someday all the animals don't need to be saved from the dairy industry. Certainly, just you don't need those foods to survive. It's the chart that we got when we were in school, with the milk and the meat and eggs, and like that just really was untrue.
So, unaware and advocate. Those are the two.
Mm.
That's great.
I guess.
That's great. It's such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're really busy. Now, what's the best way for people to find you on Instagram, the web, on social media in general?
So, yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to talk to you as well and get to share a lot more details of our story here and my story. And everyone can find us on Instagram or Facebook and YouTube under Little Buckets Farm Sanctuary, and all the links to all of the social media and ways to help us are listed on our website at www.littlebucketsfarmsanctuary.org. So there's lots of ways that people can help us. That it's not necessarily monetary donations. Obviously, they're wonderful, but there's lots of ways that you can help us. Just from doing some different things out there that are on our website. They can certainly help us. So I appreciate. Hopefully, everybody will want to. Hopefully, if you go out and check on our website, I certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being on Plant Your Seed.
Thank you so much, Fred.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.